now stand. And we stand and we rejoice in the hope of the glory of God. Therefore, since we've been justified through faith, we have peace with God. God bless His word. On this, your church anniversary, I see your theme is working together in the unity of Christ, taken from 1 Corinthians 12 and 12. And there's one thing that jumps out at me from that that scripture passage, the body being one, many members. Don't forget about that, one body, many members. Many members, one body, different members. Different kinds of members. Your body, you got one body, but it ain't all one part. The arms don't do what the legs do. The toes don't do what the fingers do. But it's one body. So today I want to talk about the church. Justified sinners at peace with God. The church. Justified sinners at peace with God. No matter who you are, where you've been, or what you've done. God loves you. Whenever I read that 5th chapter of Paul's letter to the Romans, I'm reminded of who makes up the church. I wonder if you've really ever taken a good look at the people who make up the church. I'm not talking about who you think ought to make up the church. I'm talking about the people who actually make up the church, who are actually in the church, the functioning ones in the church. Too many times we've thought of the church being full of people who don't make any mistakes. Too often we give the impression that promotes the church as a group of people who have never made any mistakes. I think I need to let you know something today. The church is full of folk who have made mistakes. And you don't have to look to your right. You don't have to look to your left. You don't have to look in front of you. And you don't have to look in back. And just look at yourself. Given that impression still works, our attitudes often suggest that church people are even incapable of making mistakes. The truth, however, is just the opposite. The church is filled with mistake makers. In fact, if there were no mistake makers, there would be no need for the church. Think about that. Think about that. Mistake makers, messed up folk. That's who make up the church. I've said for years that church ain't got but one thing that's wrong with it. The church ain't got but one thing that's wrong. You know what that one thing is? It's got people in it. If the church didn't have people in it, the church would be a perfect institution. It'd go along, would have no sin in it, wouldn't have no messed upness in it. But as soon as we get into it, oh my God. Now there are several key words. I'm going to be through in a minute here. There are several key words in this text that I want you to look at as we consider this sermon topic together. These words are faith, justified, peace, and grace. Faith, justified, peace, and grace. We're going to revisit those words, but I want you to put a pin in them for now. But before I go too far, there's something that I need you to consider from Romans chapter 4. Chapter 4 talks about Abraham and his relationship with God. Remember at chapter 5, we are justified through faith. We have peace with God because of our faith. Chapter 4 talks about Abraham and his relationship with God. Don't lose sight of that word, relationship. Don't lose sight of relationship and its connection to the church. Consider this. Abraham came into a right relationship with God not by any efforts of his own.
All right.
Abraham was not good enough, and he could not do anything that would ever be considered good enough to earn him a right relationship position with God. Ain't no need of you trying to get that good. You can't get good enough to be in right relationship with God, because even if you almost got there, or if you got there for half a minute, before you stayed there too long, you'd mess it up. You don't believe that? Read Romans chapter 7 sometime. Paul said, when I would do good, evil is always at hand. The good that I want to do, I end up not doing, and the bad that I don't want to do, that's what I end up doing. And you know why that's the case? I'll tell them so often. Now this might sound crazy, but it's the truth. Sin, my brothers and my sisters, looks good. Sin sounds good. Sin smells good. Sin tastes good. And sin feels good. That's why we sin so easily, because it's good to us. Now, I didn't say good for us. I just said it's good to us. But I'm let me go ahead on. Abraham came into a right relationship with God through his faith and by the grace of God. Now you need to put a pin in that. Abraham couldn't do enough work to be right with God, and just like Abraham couldn't, you can't either.
All right.
I'm personally fascinated by the fact that so many people want to take so much of the credit for their salvation. They either think or they want to project the notion that they deserve God's salvation. They consider themselves to be deserving because of something that they've done, or because of some things which they've refrained from doing. Romans chapter 4 reminds us in no uncertain terms that salvation is not and cannot be earned by us.